Hey guys, welcome to Behind the Scenes from Coffee with Alan and David show. I want to explain kind of what we're doing with the show. I mean, because a lot of people are tuning in. I've had so many different questions. People going, "What the hell is this?" I said, "Oh, well, what are you talking about?" It's, don't you want to? I do, but it's confusing to people. I run two different podcast shows, and it's like, well, one is work related, and then this one here is fun. You know, I talk about that other stuff all day long. I got 170 different podcasts out there, and I want that show to be something totally different than anything I've ever done before. I want to bring people on and let them ask me questions and Q&A and dissect and go from there. But this here, on the other hand, I want to be for me. I want to have fun with it and so forth. So I basically tell Davis, listen, you're producing the show, so what I want you to do is come up with the topic every single week. And what he basically does is he lets me know about 5 minutes before we go to air what we're talking about. Like I found out we were doing DAX literally about a half hour before we did the show. And I said, okay. I mean, everybody does a show on DAX, but okay, no problem. We'll see where it goes. And so he threw me a couple curveballs during the show, and really took me for a loop. I wasn't prepared for them, and while he's asking me, my brain's going, and he's looking the shit up online while he's asking me the questions, and it's like, what was the DAC and the benchmark one? Fuck if I know. You had one, didn't you? 25 years ago, I may have I had one. Yeah, let me tell you what my history is of DA converters. Okay. Um, First DAC I ever owned was an Audio Alchemy. It was a Pete Maddox, what was it, a 3.0 with a separate power supply. And I had that for a little bit of time. And, it had a lot of issues with it. And Lord knows I drove poor Pete nuts. But, the gentleman that he is, he always was there to help out. And then from there, I bought myself a Lavery, a Dan Lavery Quint, and I love this DAC. 2496, absolute glory. Just loved it. I found out that Steve Hoffman was using that DAC in his studio, his mastering studio. I said, ooh. So I, over, when he was doing DCC, and I love that sound, and I went and I got the DAC, and just, oh, I absolutely adored it. Don't get me wrong, it had its quirks, but it had a gorgeous sound quality. And then from that, I went with I had an Apogee setup, an Apogee PSX. Again, another 2496, Pro DAC, and I didn't like that as much. Good workhorse, solid built. Never had a problem using it, but wasn't my favorite to listen to. I absolutely favored the Quint over that. Then I owned, let's see, I had another Lavery, and I don't remember exactly what it was called, a DA something, DA7. It was a little tiny black box like this, and I didn't have that long, maybe 3-4 months, and I wasn't happy with that at all, so I got rid of it on Agon. From there, I went with I think I bought a Benchmark 1 at that time, followed by an Antelope Eclipse ADDA, which from there I bought the 10M, and then from the 10M I bought the Zodiac Gold with the upgraded power supply. Used the Eclipse, for the longest time, and then I downgraded it after X amount of years, and then I just used it until I couldn't use it anymore. And the Zodiac Gold I gave to Dave because I was having a problem. I'm on a Windows setup, and it really wanted to be on an Apple setup more than on a Windows setup. So had a lot of problems with it. So he took that, which is why I went and got another Antelope. And I still can't for the life of me remember what it was. It wasn't anything special. It was an inexpensive, A to DA. And, silver, full, single rack size. And I just used it to resample the output to 2496, which is what I was mastering with at the time for download sites. And I used it to reclock and then just to push the signal. And so that I really like that setup. But like I said, I gave it to Dave after a while. And that's because I went and bought myself a DAC 2 at this same time, not to use in the studio. I was using that in the theater. So I had the Eclipse downstairs in the family room. It was demoted. And I put the Benchmark 2 in the theater, and I'm using the gold in the studio. So I give Dave the gold, and I found out that MyTech is doing a Manhattan 2, and they're taking pre-sales. And so, that took, I give them my money, and that took 5-6 months to get mine. I mean, the good thing is I got a low number, and I was actually on the phone with them when they were doing mine. So, that was a great experience, and I used that bad boy for several years. I still use it to this day. I love it. I guess it's got to be now maybe 9 years old. Mine, 8, 9, somewhere ballpark, and or maybe it's turning 9 this year. Something like that. But I just love that deck to death. So I bought a second one. So I used the second one in the mastering studio. I had the gold, the gold faceplate downstairs that would replace the Eclipse. And then, like I said, the Benchmark went out in the theater. So that's when I started looking at the Burl Audio B2 Bomber. And, I'm thinking to myself, the Bomber's got problems with, it clips hard. So being able to listen to music and set clipping output, that's one thing. Being able to set a movie output, not the clip, is a little more difficult unless you put other things in the signal chain, which I didn't want to do. So I didn't go that route. Then I'm thinking, well, maybe I should replace the Manhattan downstairs and bring that upstairs, because I can do a lot with the Manhattan. It's mastering DAC. And so I got on that kick. So then I look at the Prima Luna, and I was this close from buying it, literally. And I just kept asking the same question. My entire music collection is on hard drives, and it's all in DSD. Because as I said in the podcast, I did all the work on it. So I kept asking the same question that I understand it samples 44.1 up to 192, but how do you handle the DSD? Because the DSD is being fed back to it in DOP. And I'm thinking to myself, are they taking that and converting it into 192, which would be a total loss in resolution? And I keep asking, I'm asking the sales guys, and I even asked the company, and nobody would answer me. So I just came to the conclusion that that's exactly what they're doing. They're sampling it down to 192. So I said, well, as much as I like to play with tubes, tube rectification and the drive stage and all, I would have had a ball with that, but especially using it downstairs, because I had a Prima Luna EVO 400 preamp, so that would have been great. But downsampling the DSD really turned me off. So I started looking at other DACs, and that's when I came across the Caner Audio, which is, Caner is a subsidiary company to Project, and one owns the other and so forth. And there was a lot of really great European reviews on the DAC, the Precision 210. But nobody in the States really gave a shit to review it. So I'm like, okay. Now I trusted where I was buying it from. So I basically said, you know what I like to listen to? Okay, do me a favor. If I send you some samples, take a listen. Can you describe to me how the playback is? So they said, well, we don't have a 210, but we have the CD player, so we could understand the house sound. And it was the 210 CD player, which is using an AKM chipset versus the ESS 9038 that's in mine. And I said, okay. So I send them up a nice hard drive of 256s. They can only listen to 128, so they have to down sample everything to 128. And they're playing it on a system that costs roughly about $375,000. Okay. I'm going to be playing it through a Prima Luna preamp and a pair of Atom S3 studio monitors on wirewall cable. I said, don't go too kooky, but they gave me a really good, session one night and a nice report. And I said, okay. I said, I'll go by what you said. Worst case, I don't like it, I send it back. So I order it, I get it in, it flies in from, from Czech, and hook it up and out of the box. Fantastic. For the first month. And then one of the 6922 tubes that are in the buffer stage uses a quad pack in the buffer stage. And, they're EH6920. So it's not expensive tubes, but I start to see that my sound field is shifting from center to center left to hard left. And I said, okay. So I'm now, nice thing about having studio monitors is that you can just go up there and change the volume and find out. And I'm finding out that, oh my God, I'm losing 3, 4, 4.5 dBs in order to bring it back to center. And that's not cool. But maybe it's a bad tube, right? It happens. So I order up, another set of tubes. And this time it's a quad pack of Telly's CCAs. And, they're nice tubes. $1,600 later, and 8 or 9 months, all of a sudden the sound field starts shifting to mid left to hard left. Now you can imagine, I just come out of the shower, so I'm all flushed, but that's kind of the way I looked at, when I'm watching $1,600 go down the drain. So I go, okay, next time I'm buying tubes, I'm just buying another set of EH tubes, right? So I do that. They lasted 3 weeks. Boom. Okay. Gold Lions. 5 months. Boom. Okay. Can't use 6922s in this DAC. They just run it hard. So I get a hold of my broker, Jensen, and I say, listen, I got to find something. The only thing in a 7-volt heater. So he sets me up with these gorgeous Siemens PCC 189s, which I'm still using today. And boom, I was looking for a sound quality that was just like the Telly CCAs. And if you know anything about Germany and tube design back in the day, the Rohr plant for, Telefunken and the Munich plant for Munich are literally 10 minutes from each other, it's hop, Rohr is basically a suburb of Munich. So you just hop on, on the Autobahn for a minute or two, and you just get off the next exit, and there it is. So anyway, long story short, they used to swap back and forth tube models. So I'm listening to these when they came in. I mean, out of the box, I was like, oh, glorious sound. It's just, holy shit. And it was so close to the sound of the CCAs. The only thing I would say in favor of the CCAs is that, and you usually use these for, in a recording, so you use them for like tubes for microphones. It does vocals It just does really creamy, smoky sounding, natural sounding vocal. There is not another tube on the planet that is able to compete with it. This tube here it gives you like 99.98% of what the CCA gives you in the mid range. The only difference that I can tell in the frequency response is that one is gold pinned, that's the Telefunken CCAs, and this one is just raw copper. And as long as you clean up the copper pins, it gave me 99.998% of what the other one was doing. So for 1/4 the price, to this day, I'm still super satisfied with it. Can't complain. But again, it stopped chewing up tubes, and it goes to show you that they're running those heaters. But again, my answer was if I go through another set of fucking tubes, this DAC is going. I'm going to be back on the market looking for another DAC. But so far so good. So I don't want to jinx myself. I've had them in there so far for 7 months. I don't want to jinx myself. So we'll see how this plays out. See if we can get through the summer. But yeah, he threw me a couple curveballs during that interview, and it's like, some of these things I can remember, and I just other things I've gone through so much gear over the years, and I mix and match stuff all the time. So if I'm not using it, in the studio or downstairs, I'll shift it over to the theater, or I'll ship it over to my office, or this and that, and everything else, and I like to do that. I just like to rotate things every so often. Like in here, right? If you take a look at what I got in here, maybe I'll do a more in-depth with this here. But, we wanted this to be an all audiophile show, right? So I'm using one of my digital workstations, as the main PC. All the cabling is wire wheeled. Okay, great. Except for the power. The power is all Synergistics. It's all, it's all stuff that I shuffled through over the years. So, tungsten cables and the precision references and the old power cell 2 and the quadplex and all that shit. Okay. And that's great. At least I'm still using this stuff, right? And then for the DAC, I got a Benchmark DAC 2 that I am using simply as a DAC. I'm pushing it into a Manley Absolute headphone amp, and then I'm using my quad headphones. And I'm satisfied with all that. It's a pretty nice setup. I use an Apogee mic, so there's nothing here, right? And then I got the Orsbot camera here, right? So there's everything here is high quality. I didn't want to go and do this and use. Well, let me just use the shittiest mic feed. Let's do it, and we're going to do it right. Audiophile show, an audiophile setup, and it doesn't have to be a creme de la creme audiophile setup. It is what it is. Maybe one of these days I'll switch something out. Who the fuck knows with me? So that's that. Oh, another really cool thing that we did, and I still got them in, by the way, is that we're trying 3 different sets of parallel filters over the next, so many episodes, and I'm trying to see after. That's why I want to do these after shows to see if it's still giving me what I want. Now I can tell that I have a little bit elongator on the nose there that I had the other day when I did the shoot. So it's working a little bit. We're testing out these parallel filters that are all audiophile graded. Nothing of it is mine. I didn't want to go and be biased and say, well, mine's a bit. I didn't want to do that. I'm trying to give everybody a fair shake, and I felt the best way to do it is just to literally plug it in, try it several times over the week time span to see how the video image progresses in depth and maybe a little bit more warmth in the vocal, and to see how that all panned out. And then at the end of the day, I would reveal it and allow the user to basically say, well, I like the one in the first episode and the behind the scenes. It really gave me what my system's missing. Or I like the second one, or I like the third one. So that way there, everybody kind of gets an idea and gives them something to play with. A lot of times you do these things blind, and they always say, well, listen through my speakers in my room, and who the hell knows what you're getting, This way here, it's all literally direct feed. So we'll see. It's an interesting experiment. That's all right. That's pretty much it for today. I just wanted to say that I did fuck up in the episode, and the other thing is I want to say is that somebody said this to me and said, Alan, you talk a mile a minute. Yeah, I've always had a tendency to do that. I'm one of these people that I sleep 3-4 hours every single night and have since I've been knee high, and I always have 6 or 7 things going on up in my brain at a time. And sometimes I will get into a conversation. Dave will ask a side question, and the next thing you know is I'm off on the side question, and I can't figure out a way to weave myself back to where I started. And I go off on, I just, one of those type of deals. And I didn't realize how bad it was until I was watching a friend of mine just last night. He was interviewed, and he's a super, super smart guy. I've known him 30 years. And, but he's kind of like I am. He's always got 15 different things going on upstairs. And, so anyway, I'm watching him be interviewed. I'm going, holy shit, he talks a mile a fucking minute. And he's weaving through 15 different things. And the guys that are interviewing are trying so desperately to weave him back in because he's just going off and off and off. And, he's telling a story from start to finish that takes 45 minutes to do. And that's what happened. Somebody asked him a question, got him as his focus centered on something else. And that's where we went. And that happens to me sometimes. So it's very important that the guys that I do this podcast with, every so often they say, hey, Al, and they reel me back in. And then I will get back to where I was. But, if you notice that's just my train of thought. That's how I work through things. All right. That's about all I want to say. I've talked long enough. So this was behind the scenes. We're going to be doing this once a week, and take care for now. I'll see you on next Monday. Take care.